All right, good morning, or whatever time of day it happens to be where you are. This is the Argo Vermeer YouTube channel, the tagline Collectivism Kills. This is the channel associated with my blog, unreformingtheology.com, where I talk about all this kinds of thing, where I have a lot of articles which deal with topics such as you find on this channel. So if you're into this kind of thing and you want to read it, you can find hundreds of articles on my blog, unreformingtheology.com. Some are going to be more interesting to you than others. Some are better written than others, but that's the way it goes. So if you want to check that out, you can. Today we're going to do part 3, and hopefully the final part, on the voting lie, why you are a citizen slave. Apologize for my voice. Fall allergies are kicking in. Those of you that have been listening for any length of time, the tiny number of you there are, know that I struggle with seasonal allergies, and I happen to be in the worst place, literally the worst place, I believe, on earth for someone with the kinds of allergies I have. I am on the East Coast, in the middle of farmland, farming country, and between the farms and the fertilizers and the pesticides and just the general makeup of the foliage around here, which seems to bloom and blossom in the spring and in the fall, it's absolutely brutal. And believe me, if you're asking me why do I stay here, believe me, if I didn't have to, I wouldn't. So the point being is, I apologize for my voice and clearing of the throat. It's just unfortunately the way it goes here for me. We went down to the beach for a couple weeks this summer, and it's heavenly because the beach is the one area where I just don't seem to be allergic to anything. I feel normal for like the only 2 weeks of the entire year do I feel normal. So, yeah, I do apologize. But anyway, that's not interesting to anybody. We're going to talk about the voting lie, part 2, and why you are a citizen slave. And again, go ahead and vote if you want to. I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't. I'm just saying it doesn't matter. If you want to vote, makes you feel better, helps you sleep better, go for it. But if you'd rather take a nap or go to the movies or pet your cat or go have a drink at the bar, almost anything else is a better use of your time, or at least as good a use of your time as voting, because it's not going to change anything. The inexorable march of the collectivist metaphysical premises which underwrite this government, as well as every other government on the planet, are going to march on unimpeded till the end, whether you vote or not. Believe me, don't believe me, it's up to you. I really don't have any dog in this fight, so you do you. This is not a channel where I'm not trying to collect acolytes or followers. I'm simply trying to state the truth based on the metaphysical premises. So when we examine ideas and institutions and schools of thought at their metaphysical level, we can understand whether or not those institutions, ideas, etc., are rational or irrational and are therefore ineluctably doomed to failure. And the state is one of those. It is an institution that is rooted on metaphysical premises which are simply untenable and rationally inconsistent, and therefore governments collapse. They will, and they always will. They will either become totalitarian and then collapse, or there will be some kind of, I guess you could say, black swan event where, I don't know, some kind of external or internal revolution will happen, or something will destabilize, and then they'll collapse. So it'll either become totalitarian and then collapse, or it'll collapse before that, but it's going to collapse. Okay, that's what governments do, because they are rooted in metaphysics that are irrational. So, now before we get to finishing up this the voting series, I was listening to, I listen to all kinds of podcasts and YouTube videos, and I was listening to one that was criticizing Joe Rogan's latest stand-up comedy special. And it was clear that whoever this YouTube content creator was does not like Joe Rogan, and was trying to explain why Joe Rogan was a clown. and that I think the implicit point that he was trying to make was that, well, of course, Joe Rogan's stand-up comedy special is going to be horrible because Joe Rogan is stupid and horrible. Now, I don't personally believe that. I'm not a huge fan of Joe Rogan. I don't really listen to him with any regularity. I think he's fine. I mean, I don't particularly care for his stand-up, but I don't particularly care for a lot of stand-up. But I'm not a good arbiter whether somebody's a good stand-up or not. I happen to not like George Carlin. Apparently, people think George Carlin is the greatest stand-up comedian that has ever lived. I think he's a political ideologue that just gets up there and makes political speeches that he doesn't actually have to defend because he can just wrap it up in the guise of, well, I'm just a comedian. Why would anybody listen to me? I think it's just a cheap and lazy way of making political points without ever having to actually defend your position. I'm not saying George Carlin is wrong, but I don't like that in my comedians. I don't like polemicists and pundits and demagogues who use comedy as an intellectual hedge, as a hedge against criticism. I just don't like that. I don't like political comedy at all for that very reason, because comedians can just simply go, I'm just making a joke. Why would anybody listen to me? You know, it's like the whole Jon Stewart. I'm just a guy that has a TV show that follows talking puppets. Why would anybody take me seriously? The whole John, it's just a lie. It's lazy. It's just, they just want to make their political points, but they don't actually want to defend their position. So I don't like Carlin. So maybe I'm not the greatest judge of who's a great comedian who isn't. I think Joe Rogan's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with him. But anyway, one of the things, and this is just sort of an aside, one of the things this guy was trying to use as a means to sort of bludgeon Joe Rogan's reputation as he's just some kind of an idiot was, at one point, Joe Rogan questioned the Apollo moon landing. And somehow this made him a moron. That he questioned the idea that the moon landing, he thought that the moon landing was fake. Now, so he had a guest on there that was like, do you believe that the Apollo moon landing was fake? And Joe Rogan was like, I did at one point, but now I don't. And apparently the I did at one point makes him an idiot. So even though Joe Rogan has now changed his mind on that, he's still an idiot because he once believed. And I suspect that people all over the place miss the point when they are examining conspiracy theorists. Conspiracy theorists are, whether it's 9/11, whether it's the Apollo moon landing, anything. You're just looked at as you're just an idiot. You're just a lunatic. You're a loon. You're just a scary lunatic. It's usually a right-wing, conservative, fringe, pseudo-national socialist. You know, that's the whole idea as to why conspiracy theorists are so stupid and dangerous. But I think people miss the point. The real question is not, do you think the Apollo moon landing was fake? The real question is, do you think your government would go to great lengths to fabricate an event? Because to do so would gives them greater access to political power and wealth. If it is politically expedient and convenient for the ruling class to do so, in that it creates greater wealth and power for themselves, are they capable, and would they consider, and would they actually fabricate a major world event for that reason? And the answer to that question should be absolutely fucking yes. Do I think that the US government or any government is capable of fabricating an event if they believe if the ruling class believes it is going to bring them greater political power and wealth? And the answer is absolutely fucking yes, they would. I don't care if it's 9/11. I don't care if it's Pearl Harbor. I don't care if it's the Apollo moon landing. The answer is yes, they would. That's the real question. And that is the underwriting premise of quote-unquote conspiracy theorists. Conspiracy theorists understand that governments will go to great length and time and expense to fabricate events in the service of their own political power and wealth, and they will. So, do I believe in the Apollo moon landing? I don't really know. I've seen both sides of the argument. Look, if it makes me seem like less of a fucking idiot because I think to say that yes, we went to the moon, then yes, we went to the moon. I could care less. It's irrelevant to me. I haven't looked into it. I've heard both sides. I don't really care. Whether they did or didn't is irrelevant to me. I'm interested in metaphysics. I'm interested in assumptions which underwrite the state, not really what the state does once those metaphysical premises have been understood and examined. So if it makes people think I'm less of a fucking moron to say, yeah, we went to the moon, then fine, that's what I believe. But what I also believe is that I do believe that governments can and do go to great lengths to fabricate, make up an event, and invent circumstances and situations and world events in service to their political power and wealth. Yes, I fucking do. That's a hard yes. Yes, they do, and yes, they have. Whether this describes accurately the Apollo moon landing, I don't know. Let's just say no, because apparently it makes me less of a fucking idiot to say no. Now, I will say I do not think the Earth is flat. I don't think that at all. That I have examined both sides, and I'm not going to get into that. That I don't believe. I am not a flat earther. So sorry to any flat earthers that might hear my voice. I'm not trying to offend you. But no, I'm not on board with that because I have looked at the data, have spent time examining that. And yeah, I'm pretty hardcore convinced that the Earth is not flat. But yeah, everything else, was 9/11 an inside job? Yes, no, whatever answer you want me to give you that makes you think I'm less of an idiot so that I can get you to listen to me when it comes to metaphysics, that's my answer. Was 9/11 an inside job? Yes and no. Depending, whatever you want me to say. Did we fake the Apollo moon landing? Yes or no. Whatever you want. Whatever makes me look like less of an idiot to you, I concede your argument. You gonna argue with me that we faked it. I agree with you. And then I'm going to turn around with the next guy that's right next to me, and he's going to argue that we did go to the moon. I agree with him, too. I don't care, is what I'm saying. So, what I believe is that the government will fake shit because it's politically convenient for them to do so. So, that's my answer with that. And I don't know. I don't think this guy made Joe Rogan look like an idiot at all. I think he made Joe Rogan look good because it looks like Joe Rogan can change his mind when he's presented with evidence. So he was a believer in he did believe that we faked the Apollo moon landing. He was presented evidence to the contrary, and now he doesn't think that anymore. I don't know how this makes Joe Rogan a fucking idiot. Makes Joe Rogan look like a normal human being to me, a guy who has an opinion and goes, oh, wait a minute, there's evidence to the contrary. Oh, I think I should change my mind. I'm not sure how this makes Joe Rogan a fucking idiot at all. Makes Joe Rogan look like a normal, actually quite intellectually healthy person, as far as I know. As far as I can tell. People change their minds, and rational people change their minds when presented with rational evidence. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for people I've run into: Christians, atheists, pro-government people, nationalists, communists. You know, Joe Rogan seems a hell of a lot more rational than any of those people because I've been talking to people for 12 years, and I can show them the rational error in their fundamental premises 6 ways from Sunday, and they're like, no, I don't. Sorry, no. Not going to accept it. Don't believe you. So, I don't know. I don't want to go off on a tangent there. Too late, I know. But at any rate, I just thought that was something interesting to bring up. The real question isn't whether or not you're stupid enough to believe in a conspiracy theory. The real question is whether or not you're stupid enough to believe that your government won't fabricate events in service to their political power, wealth, and agenda. I don't think the conspiracy theorist, when the conspiracy theorist is looked at via that perspective, that he's a person who understands what the lengths that the state will go to secure its power and wealth, I think the conspiracy theorist looks a lot less crazy, and that may also go for flat earthers, even though I don't agree with their position. I do agree with their assumption that those in power will go to great lengths to fabricate great events and ideas in service to their political agendas, and that those political agendas are in fact global. In that sense, I think the flat earthers are fine. I just don't agree that the earth is flat, but I don't have a problem with them looking into it either, because they're cynical when it comes to the government, and they should be, and so should you. So, okay, let's get back to voting now that I've babbled on for 15 minutes. Okay, the voting lie, you are a citizen slave, part 3. Okay, voting is the idea, and again, if you need to get caught up, listen to parts 1 and 2. But voting is the idea that the government seeks to cooperate with the governed. But here again, we run smack into that same old contradiction, which perpetually undercuts the idea that the state, the government, the ruling class, can promote the freedom and liberty of those it governs. It doesn't. As I've said before, governments do not exist to care for you. They exist to own you. Governments do not exist to care for you as though a parent cares for their children. Government exists to control you and own you and rule you as a master does his slave. It is not a parent-child relationship. In that relationship, the child grows up. It is a master-slave relationship. And in that relationship, the slave does not outgrow their slavery. So this idea that through allowing the citizens to vote, the government no longer actually governs, rules, or controls you is a lie. That's a contradiction. You can vote all you want. You are only complicit in your own slavery. To vote means you accept the game. You accept the conditions. To vote means you have accepted your place. You have accepted the political and social conditions which define your existence. You are the governed and they govern you. You are the ruled and they rule you. You are the slave and they are the master. You have conceded those root existential premises before you vote. As a voter, as one who votes, those are the conditions you must accept. In order for you to vote, you must accept the idea that the government has legitimate authority to govern you and to define and describe the nature of your existence. Those are the metaphysical assumptions. Those are the metaphysical conditions you accept before you go vote. And once you vote, it is a tacit declaration that you agree with your position. You are to be ruled and they are to rule you. That is what you concede when you vote. And therefore, you have no right to complain when your politicians turn out to be tyrants. You conceded the conditions. You conceded your place. Why would you expect not to be governed? If you're voting for those who govern you, why are you getting out of sorts and angry when they actually do so? Because it's against your will. If your will was efficacious to your own existence, you wouldn't need to be governed, in which case you wouldn't need to vote. The very fact that you vote concedes the idea that you must be governed, which means your mind and your will are insufficient to your own life. You must be controlled. If you are not controlled, if you are left to your nature, if you are left to think and act for yourself, you will necessarily go extinct. The species will go extinct. You will die. You cannot succeed. You cannot live. You must be governed. If you are not governed, you have no chance of succeeding in your own existence. So you complain when you vote. So when you vote and the voting ends up ushering in a more and more tyrannical government, you complain. But that very tyranny is what you agree to before you vote in the first place, based on the metaphysics which underwrite the state and therefore underwrite the vote. So don't complain. When you vote and nothing changes and the government just gets more and more totalitarian and tyrannical and takes more and more of your wealth and slaughters more and more of your people, don't complain. You conceded that is its right, the state's right, by your vote. That's what you've agreed to. Sounds ironic, doesn't it? Sounds contradictory. It's not. Everything that the government does that you view as tyrannical, you have conceded to by voting. You've conceded your place. You're the ruled. They were the ruler. They're the rulers. You are the slave. They are the masters. Sorry, you have no right to complain if you vote. So, if the rulers cooperated with those they ruled, they would A, not be rulers by definition. A ruler does not cooperate with his subject. And you can talk about representative democracy, and it's different in America, and the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Bullshit. And I'm sorry, if you think the Constitution and the Bill of Rights means dick anymore, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. You're lost. If you can't open a window and take a look around and see what's become of your society, and you still think the Constitution has any place in what's going on, I feel legitimately sorry for you. you are almost beyond hope. You can appeal to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and blah till you're blue in the face. It's not changing the fact that, yes, your government, American or otherwise, governs you, which means rules you, which means it owns you. Government is authority or it's not government. Government is authority and authority is force. Period. Full stop. I'm sorry if you don't like this. I'm sorry if it offends you on some fundamental level. I really am, but it's the truth. And I'm sorry if it hurts. The government does not see you. It sees a collection of masses which it exists to control. That's it. And until you accept your position, you're never going to have peace. You're always going to be vexed and exasperated and frustrated and quaking and nervous and anxious and afraid because you think it should be going one way and it's only ever going the other way. You're going to pray and pray and pray. And why doesn't God make a change? And why doesn't? Because he can't. And why can't he? Oh, I offended the Christians now, did I? I offended you. Why can't God make, because God can't make a square circle. God can't make 2 + 2 = 5. And God cannot take an institution which is rooted in collectivist metaphysics and make it equal individual liberty. He can't. God is not the God of the irrational. He is the God of the rational. God does not make 2 + 2 = 5. If God could make 2 + 2 = 5, he would be the purveyor, promoter, and creator of contradiction. It would contradict his very truth, his very self. That's why, no matter how hard you pray, no matter how hard you hope, nothing changes and gets better, because God can't do anything in this. You are conceding that 2 + 2 is 5 by hoping your government promotes your individual liberty. It can't. It's the same thing as saying, please, God, make 2 + 2 = 5. Make a square circle. You don't have a frame of reference for that. Even if God could do that, your consciousness depends on conceptual consistency to be conscious. Even if God could make 2 + 2 = 5, you wouldn't recognize it. You have no existential frame of reference for it. So, stop praying, stop asking, accept the facts. The reason why your prayers don't work and the reason why your votes don't work is because you don't understand your position. Once you understand what's really going on, at least now you know. You know what to expect. It's not going to get better. No candidate's going to make it better, no matter how great you think they are. And at least you can stop stressing about the why. I'm not saying it's comfortable in the West right now, but at least you're not vexed and wringing your hands over, why won't it get better? Why, God, won't you answer my prayer? Why, God, won't you make it better? Why, God, won't you fix this country? Because God doesn't make 2 + 2 = 5, because God is not in the position of creating bullshit. That's why. Why don't you accept the truth that your vote doesn't matter and this is what government does? Why don't you wake up and stop asking God for bullshit and ask him for the right things that in the midst, you could ask God instead, in the midst of this chaos, protect me and my family from the madness. Give us a way out. Put a hedge around the violence and the madness. Stop asking God to change the country. He's not going to change the country. The country has made a decision to be what it is. But he can help you. He can answer your rational prayer for protection. And you can live your life as a rational person. And start there. Start living your right life in the truth and then pray and see what happens. I'm not going to change government because I can't change government's nature. To pray that God changes the nature of government is an irrational prayer, but I can start praying that, well, maybe God can secure my safety, our well-being, provide for our needs, stuff like that. So rather than focusing on things going on out there beyond your control, and frankly, beyond God's control, because God is not does not answer nonsensical prayers, you can focus on yourself. Ask God to help you where you are. Okay, so anyway, I beat that dead horse. Moving on. I don't want to get too theological. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a preacher. This is not a religious channel. So, moving on. Okay, so if the rulers cooperated with those they ruled, they would A, not be rulers by definition, and B, would have no legal authority over them. which would make voting moot. So if the rulers cooperated with the ruled, they wouldn't be rulers, and they would have no legal authority over the people with whom they were cooperating. Cooperation is not government. When you cooperate with your neighbor, hey, can I borrow your that? Yeah, can I borrow your that? Yeah. Hey, I'll mow your grass if you hey, while you're away on vacation, I'll cut your lawn. If when we're away on vacation on our skiing trip in the winter, you snow blow the driveway. I mean, this is cooperation. Who's in control? Nobody. Where's the authority? No one. It's cooperation. There's no authority there. You don't vote for that kind of an interaction. You cooperate. You say, yes, I can, or no, I can't. Okay. Okay, so please, please, please remember that governments do not exist to care for the people. This is a lie. They exist to rule them. And to rule them is to own them. Okay? So remember this. I listen to a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of podcasts. And the argument is America takes better care of its citizens than China. No, China takes better care of its citizens than America. Oh no, Israel takes worse care of its citizens than a Muslim country. The Muslims take better care of their citizens than Israel. Israel takes better care of their citizens. Listen, governments are not in the business of caring for you. They're in the business of owning you. Stop trying to find a solution in another iteration of the state. You're not going to find it there. All governments are the same metaphysically, which means they have the same exact point, which is to become totalitarian and then collapse. Doesn't matter the iteration. The metaphysics are all identical. They're all the same, so forget it. Don't go looking, oh, I hate capitalism, I'm going to become a communist. Oh, I hate socialism, I'm going to become a free market libertarian. Stop. Just stop. There's no solution in the state. There's no solution. Okay? It's a zero-sum game. The idea that I'm going to be, I was once a capitalist, but now I've seen the error of my ways, and now I'm a communist. No, it's a lateral move. It's lateral. It's meaningless. You're the same person. You have the same fundamental ideas. The same problems you have with capitalism are the same problems you're going to have with communism 25 years from now, if you spend any time actually thinking about it. Okay, so in summary for this part, the vote has nothing to do with the freedom and beliefs of the individual because the vote is a social contract that does not recognize the individual. So, voting cannot make you a free, independent individual because voting has nothing to do with the individual. The state doesn't recognize the individual, and therefore you as an individual not voting to be individually free. Doesn't work that way. Call me crazy. I don't care. You believe what you want to believe. I don't really care. You can go thinking that voting is going to make something better. It's not, but if you want to believe it is because that's just your way and you're going to demagogue this issue, go ahead. Like I said, I got no skin in this game. I already know where things are going. I made my preparations. I mean, insofar as I'm able, legal and rational. So, voting, therefore, anyway, I would say this: my soul is secure. You remember that scene in The Last Crusade, where I think it was Indy was pointing this gun at this. There was like a Roman, an Italian Christian. I forget the scene, but he just stopped this guy from this Christian sect that was getting ready to do something, and Indy had him on the ground with a gun in his face or whatever, and the Christian guy goes, "Go ahead and shoot me. My soul is secure. How is yours?" That's the way I'd put it. Look, I got no skin in this game. I don't care how many people believe me or don't. My soul is secure. It is. So whatever happens, I'm good, spiritually and intellectually. Now, I don't like being uncomfortable. I don't want things to go bad. I'm not a monster. I would love our society to wake up, realize the position they're in, and make changes in a peaceful, voluntary way. I am a voluntarist. I am nonviolent. I don't look at the political ruling class as a class. I say class when I'm speaking politically and I'm making the metaphysical argument, which is setting up a distinction between the state and the masses. But I don't fundamentally look at the political elite as a mass. They're individuals. And I'm not in the business of violence against individuals. Most politicians are good people. They just don't understand, same as us. They don't do it because they're malicious and evil. Most of them think they're doing a good thing. And like I said before a million times, 90% of the politicians you could leave your kids with for a week and you would have no worries. Don't buy this, that every politician is some monster. They're just not. But They have faith, they have false metaphysical assumptions, but they're individuals. So I am nonviolent. I'm simply saying I don't want it to be uncomfortable. I want society to wake up and do better. But my soul is secure. I'm not looking for people to follow me, agree with me. My pride, my self-esteem is not dependent on how many people agree or disagree with me on this channel, in these videos, how many likes I get, how many views I get. My self-esteem is not tied to that. My assurance is not tied to that. The only thrill I get out of seeing higher numbers is because I'm thinking maybe that more people are coming over to the side of cooperation, individualism, voluntarism, examining the metaphysics. That gets me excited. But as far as me and how I feel about myself and my position in the world and my existence and my metaphysical standing and my state before God, I'm fine there. So believe me, don't believe me, but I think it would be in your best interest, psychologically and probably physically, to just examine, or at least give some thought to what I'm saying and see if it's rational. Okay, voting has nothing to do with you or me as individuals. Thus, voting, therefore, cannot make us free as individuals or give us liberty. So if we accept that we are individuals and our individuality is real, we understand that voting cannot make us free, because voting has nothing to do with the individual. Voting is a function of the state, and the state is a collectivist institution that doesn't care about the individual because it doesn't recognize the individual as having legitimate existence. So your voting will not make you free. You don't exist in the vote. We're speaking politically, okay? On the contrary, what did I say here? I don't even know what that word is. I can't read my own handwriting. On the contrary, the vote obligates us to our group identity, the masses, and thus it enslaves us as a group. The vote, make no mistake, is simply your complicity into your own slavery. You are simply accepting your place in this socioeconomic political game. You are the pawn, they are the player. All your voting does is just reaffirm their right to rule you. That's why I would say better off spending your time doing something else, or at least, if you don't vote, I wouldn't stress about it, is all I'm saying. You can if you want, but if you'd rather go get a beer or take a nap, it's no worse use of your time. Now, let's get into something a little less abstract, which I've been promising for like an hour and a half or 2 hours now. I'm going to try here to show you that voting does not translate from... Now, I'm going to show you, or I hope to show you, that voting does not translate from the collective, the group, and one's group identity, to the individual. I'm going to show you that voting is, in fact, a collectivist metaphysical enterprise that does not translate to the individual, which is why it has nothing to do with you as an individual. So if we can see that you as an individual actually exist, now you may not think so, and if you don't think so, that's fine too, but I would suggest that you examine your metaphysics, examine the idea of how then do you explain individual consciousness. You'll notice that when the scientific determinists, which are just another iteration of collectivist philosophers, and yes they are, and this is all atheists are. The reason why I don't have comments open on my atheist videos is because 99% of atheists are demagogues. They're religious ideologues and zealots, or at least they function that way. You'll notice that every single explanation, fundamentally, as to the existence of consciousness that science can give you is that your individual existential, meaning your individual epistemological frame of reference, your consciousness from your own frame of reference, your epistemological frame of reference is a function of something outside of it. Somehow, something outside of you has created an absolute and absolutely distinct epistemological frame of reference. Your absolutely distinct, conscious, epistemological frame of reference is somehow a direct function of something outside of it. That is a rank contradiction, in every single scientific explanation is rooted in the idea that consciousness is a function of something outside of itself, which means it's not a frame of reference, which means it's not conscious of anything, which means it doesn't actually exist, which means you're not actually conscious. So if you want to think yourself that you as an individual don't exist. You're just a function of some external laws of physics, nature, biological evolution, mathematics, whatever. You can think that. But I would assert and I would submit that that position is rooted in a rank mystic contradiction in terms. That you are your conscious frame of reference is somehow a direct function outside of itself. You can know that you are not an individual. Your consciousness, which is subjective, can nevertheless be objectively aware of its own subjective existence. So, I'm going to put that on the side for now because I don't want to get sidetracked. That's a complicated issue, and that deserves its own video, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail right now. But let's assume that you as an individual do exist. If we can get into the mysticism and the implicit sophistry of the scientific determinist idea that somehow consciousness is a function of something outside of itself, that your conscious frame of reference is not actually a frame of reference, which means it doesn't actually exist, which means you're not actually conscious of any. We can get into all that nonsense, that scientific determinist, Platonist, mystic bullshit later. But for right now, we're going to assume that, yeah, you actually do exist as an individual, and therefore voting has nothing to do with you because voting is a collectivist proposition. And I'm going to show you that now. Okay. So, how can I show you that voting does not translate from the collective, the group, one's identity, to the individual? Because a one-on-one relationship between a governor and the governed, we can see clearly that on a one-on-one, so if it's just you and someone else, you and another person, individually, just you, yourself, and them, themselves, we can see clearly that at this level, where one is the governor and one is the governed, we can see one-on-one, just you and another person, it's just the two of you, we can see that at this level of the very level, the root level of the individual, you and your neighbor, you and the corollary other. So individualist metaphysics imply yourself and other selves. So you and the other self. So the fundamental metaphysical premises of individuals imply you exist and your neighbor exists. I'm not going to get into individualist metaphysics, but if you are you, then there is a corollary other. So it's just you and the other. Two of you, just you yourself and your neighbor, one-on-one. We can see that the relationship here with a governor and one who is governed doesn't work. It doesn't work on this level. Well, or we can see really what I'm getting at is that on the one-on-one relationship, the idea of a governor and one who is the governor and the other one who is governed, we can clearly see that at this level, such a relationship is really that of master and slave, not governed and governor, but master and slave. So one-on-one, the idea of one person having governmental authority over the other really looks like what? Master and slave. One possesses the authority to compel the other into a law which they, the governor, the ruling one, implement. So the efficacy and the relevance of the law rests with the material coercive power, the physical coercive power of those who are in charge, of the rulers, right? There is no law without the physical, coercive, violent power of those who are governing, of the rulers, of the ruling class, of the political leadership. So if we have a one-on-one relationship, we have one governor and one governed. One governor possesses the authority to enforce the law, which they get to define and describe, because without them, the law is meaningless. The law, its relevancy and its efficacy is entirely rooted in the ability of them to enforce it. They are the law. So you have one person in authority over the other. That is not government. That is slavery. Okay? That's slavery. So, at the one-on-one level, voting clearly breaks down. When there is only one person to vote for, or one candidate, and one person who shall vote, then the candidate always holds office. You get to vote, but you only get to vote for him, which means voting becomes meaningless. You're just a slave, and he's always the master. He can give you the vote as many times a year as he wants. It's irrelevant. The vote's going to go the same way. He's going to get elected. You see, it doesn't work on the one-on-one level. There's only one candidate, and there's only one constituent who votes. Therefore, the candidate always holds his office perpetually and indefinitely, and therefore, likewise, holds the law and authority. He perpetually commands. He is perpetually in charge. He is the master. The other one is the slave. Voting doesn't work on the one-on-one level. It has nothing to do with individuals. Nothing. The governor is governor in perpetuity, and the governed is governed in perpetuity. There's no representation. There's no cooperation. There's no freedom, no liberty, only slavery. How do you get individual liberty and freedom from this level, on this level, one-on-one? So if voting breaks down at the individual level and all groups are comprised of individuals, why does voting magically work when it becomes the ruling class and the masses, but doesn't work on the one-on-one? If individuals are real, and therefore all groups are comprised of individuals, then voting should translate from the individual level to the collective level. But it doesn't. Why? Because voting is a collectivist metaphysical proposition, has nothing to do with the individual, which is why it breaks down at the most basic level of the individual. Which is why, if you're an individualist like me, you recognize that the vote is a waste of time. It's a contradiction. And if you're a cynic like me, you understand that all it does is give your government the moral authority to continue to rule you and never have to question themselves. They can always just go, well, they voted for me. They clearly want me to do this. Of course I'm going to rule them in government that they want. They voted for me. They vote for us. If they didn't want it, they wouldn't keep voting, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Why not continue to expand my political authority and power? They want it, clearly. They keep voting. So clearly they're into it. That's all the voting is. So if you're an individualist like me, you understand, no, voting is a waste of time. And it's really just it's just you conceding to your own slavery. So as a self-respecting individual human being, I don't do it. I just don't. Because I'm not going to concede the rules of the game. I'm law-abiding because I'm not a fool. Oh, I understand the physical coercive power of the state very well. I mean, not from personal experience. I've never had any trouble with the law or anything like that. I'm just saying, I see it. I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to poke that bear. And I suggest you do the same. You work within the law. Get your mind right. Get your assumptions right. That's one thing you can do. And then go from there, but do it within the law. You don't want to bring that wrath. And plus, once you understand the position you're in, believe me, the idea that you're going to sit there and argue with a cop when he pulls you over and pull this sovereign citizen bullshit, that's going to get you nothing but a beat down. And at the end of the day, you've done nothing except give yourself a beat down. No, when you get pulled over, your best thing to do is yes sir, no sir, because you're not a fool. I'm not saying sovereign. No, I should be careful. I don't think they're fools. I get why they do what they do, and I respect it. So forgive me. I didn't mean to offend any people who are of the sovereign citizen kind of mindset. That's wrong. I'm just saying that for me, it's yes or no, sir, because I know my place. I know what they think of me, and I'm not arguing with the cop. I'm not going to argue metaphysics with the cop. I'm going to go yes or no, sir, because I understand I'm dealing with an institution that fundamentally believes it owns me, and I recognize that. So I'm not going to sit there in the street and do anything other than yes or no, sir. Here's my license and registration, sir, and I'll get a lawyer if I want to make an argument. But that's what I recommend you do. But I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, okay. So the governor so at the individual level, the governor is governor in perpetuity, and the governed is governed in perpetuity. There's no representation. There's no cooperation. There's no freedom. There's no liberty. There's only slavery. Voting doesn't translate to the individual level. What about the free part, you might say? What about the free part in free elections? What if both persons get to vote? Of course, the outcome is obvious. Perpetual stalemate. Each person will always vote for himself. So again, here, because if you don't vote for yourself, you basically put the other person in authority over you in perpetuity. You see? So you have to vote for yourself. As soon as you don't, you're a slave, and therefore all your rights are forfeit. So people with an IQ over 100, I don't want to bring IQ. Anybody with a rational mind understands that they always vote for themselves. So here again, on the individual, voting falls apart. If everybody always just votes for themselves, then voting becomes moot. Why vote? Just cooperate. So at that point, there are only two options. There's power or there's cooperation. One person. So the two individuals can either fight each other, where one enslaves or destroys the other, or they can cooperate. I did say here, I suppose one could argue that they each take turns ruling the other, but you understand how that would break down. Once you concede to be ruled, there's no going back, because the other person controls the law. The other person's the authority, which means he becomes the only candidate. He would have to forfeit his authority he would have to forfeit his authority in order to allow you to vote for yourself. If he did that, he'd be essentially cooperating with you. So why not just cooperate? So he either is ruler forever, he either becomes master, the authority in perpetuity, or he just cooperate. Why even have the vote? Just cooperate. Why complicate it? So you're either going to be perpetually a slave, one person's an authority over the other, or there's going to be cooperation. There's no middle ground. Voting at which point becomes irrelevant. You're either cooperating, in which there's no point to voting, or it's a master-slave relationship, in which there's no point to voting. So at the individual level, voting doesn't work. Voting doesn't translate. So, so fundamentally, blah, blah, blah. There can be no real social contract at the individual level, which can incorporate voting. It's either power or it's cooperation. There's no such thing as voting. And therefore, voting's a lie. Because, if at the individual level it doesn't work, it's not going to work at the level of the group, because groups are simply collections, or groups are comprised of individuals. So the idea that something works at the group level but not at the individual level, fundamentally, doesn't work. Like, I understand a football game, you can't play one-on-one, but you see what I'm saying? I'm saying metaphysically. I'm saying politically. If something doesn't work at the individual level, it's not going to work at the collective level. So it's like, for example, you have a football team, but if the idea that you're going to take two people who can't play, like if you're going to, how could I do this? If you have two people fundamentally who don't know anything about football and have no athletic talent, the idea that you're going to fill two groups with the same kind of people and all of a sudden they're going to be able to play football is a lie. There's a certain nature to these two. These people have a certain nature. They're unathletic and they don't know anything about football. So the idea that you're going to fill two groups with this kind of person, this fundamental kind of person, is not going to automatically magically make football happen. There's something at the very fundamental level that will inform the group level. You see what I'm saying? So that's what I'm trying to get at. Because reality is fundamentally individualist, it has to be individualist so all individuals have the same individualist nature at the metaphysical level. Whatever doesn't work on the individual level is not going to work at the group level, because groups are just collections of individuals. So I hope that makes sense. So voting only works at the level of the collective. As soon as voting is introduced into the social contract, the individual is replaced by the group. So, in order for you to have voting, you have to collectivize the individual. The individual is no longer an individual. The individual is simply an expression of the group, which is collectivist metaphysics. There's no such thing as an individual. All individuals are simply manifestations of their abstract group identity. You are your group. Fundamentally, absolutely. Your nature is not individual. Your nature is your group identity. So as soon as you introduce voting, you've taken the individual and you have collectivized him at the metaphysical level. He is fundamentally no longer himself. That happens automatically as soon as you introduce the vote. So as soon as voting is introduced into the social contract, the individual is replaced by the group at the metaphysical level. You qua you are entirely reduced to nothing more than an expression of your group identity. It's one collective entity. The government, the ruling class, it's groups. So it's one collective entity, exercising its inherent and intrinsic and ineluctable right to authority over the other group, the blind or unwashed or unenlightened masses. It's the philosopher king, it's the philosopher kings ruling the great unwashed and unenlightened masses. The authority, the government exists to rule, period. That's its nature. And the masses exist to be ruled, period. Full stop. Cooperation is nothing. Voting is nothing. The government exists to rule, and you exist to be ruled, period. And no amount of voting is going to make that, is going to square that circle, is going to make 2 + 2 5, is going to make this, is going to make up also down at the same time. It's not. So summary, voting is a lie. The cynic in me declares that it is little more than the implied but irrelevant, but it is the implied but irrelevant complicity of the citizen slave to his own slavery. It is the permission given by the ruled for his rulers to rule him. It is permission, quote unquote, given by the slave for the master to enslave him. This is an entirely redundant and fundamentally contradictory proposition. And that this redundant and contradictory proposition of a free democratic elections legitimizes the ruling class, the state, the government, and absolves it of its rational and moral failure and guilt at the most fundamental level. This is to me criminal. The vote only serves to absolve the state, the ruling class, of its moral and rational guilt whilst brainwashing the masses of citizen slaves to believe that their slavery is actually freedom. So that's the end of this series on the vote. And again, I need to be careful. I do not think that most of our politicians know this or even recognize this. I think most of our politicians and politicians worldwide are good people. Only a small percentage of any given group are truly narcissistic and psychopathic. Now, that percentage might be higher at the level of government, but I still believe that the vast majority of our political leadership are good people. This is not a call to hate individuals, no matter what they do for a living. This is a call for all of us to recognize that we are individuals that are trying to exist that we are trying to exist as though we are collective. We are individuals that are trying to manifest our existence as expressions of groups, of collective identities, and that this doesn't work. It leads to chaos, violence, war, death, corruption, misery, etc., etc. And the reason why humanity is and has been for so many millennia in a state of perpetual war and misery is because we simply have not recognized that to live under the auspices of the state, to live under, therefore, the auspices of collectivist metaphysics is unnatural. It is contradictory to our nature. Our nature is that of individuals. And when we collectivize ourselves, we are acting and living and existing in ways that are contrary to our nature. Our nature is not violence. Our nature is not power. Our nature is cooperation. Our nature, our ethics are not legal. Legal ethics are a contradiction. They are anathema to our nature. Our ethics are moral. The ethical standard is life, liberty, and property. The right of each individual to own himself, his mind, and his labor. That's our nature. Our ethics should be moral. Our politics should be voluntary, cooperative. That's our nature. That is congruent and consistent with our nature, and it is there that we find solutions to the misery, the violence, the chaos, the corruption, the death, the bloodshed, the war. We are trying to make a square circle. We're trying to make 2 + 2 = 5. If we just get the right person in power, just have the right kind of government, if we're just all communists or socialists, if we're just all capitalists, if we're just all national socialists, if we just all stick to our race, if we just all recognize that we're all part of a race and the races should be separate, if everybody would just believe what I believe God is, we all have the right religion. We're always trying to find the next collectivist solution. It's not going to work. Collectivist metaphysics, which inform collectivist politics, which inform government, which inform voting. This is contrary to your nature. You are an individual. Your nature is not that of an animal. You're not an animal. You don't run around in packs. You don't operate on instinct. You are conscious. That's your image. That's what makes you like God. You are self-aware. You have a self. You aren't an animal. You're not an ape. You're not a monkey. You cooperate. You're peaceful. You think. You reason. You create. So, yeah. I hope this has helped. I have this is a long one. I have a little postscript here where I just say, why are we surprised when formerly free societies become tyrannical? Like, we're all apoplectic that the USA, Britain, Germany, Russia, China, Cuba, all these countries that had iterations of freedom and democracy, how did they become totalitarian? How did they become so tyrannical? I'll tell you how. Because the philosophical infrastructure is already in place. Tyranny and totalitarianism is written into the DNA of all governments, in all times, in all places, in all iterations. It's the nature of government to become totalitarian and tyrannical. It's its nature. No matter how free you think your government is, or no matter how much they try to convince you that they are a force for freedom and liberty, the DNA of totalitarianism and tyranny is written into them at their most fundamental levels. That's why the Constitution didn't give us this sort of liberty, this libertarian utopia we were hoping it would. Because written into the DNA of the Constitution is the tyranny and totalitarianism of the state, because the Constitution, by its nature, implies government. So the Constitution was never going to lead anywhere but where we are now. Don't blame it on people. Don't blame it on people who just didn't follow the Constitution. No, you've got to blame it on the Constitution. I'm not saying you blame it on an inanimate object. I'm saying blame it on the premises. The Constitution, look, I'm not saying that bad people aren't bad people. I'm not saying that tyrants that are not tyrants. I'm saying that these kinds of people, this kind of tyranny, was always implied by the Constitution. It's in the DNA of the Constitution at the root metaphysical level. And so, yes, blame individuals, but also understand that these individuals, these tyrants, are functions of the metaphysical presumptions that you affirm when you say the Constitution is the greatest government document that's ever been written by man, and if we just followed the Constitution, we'd all be free. No, understand that you are complicit in what's going on when you say things and believe that. You're trying to give yourself an out. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You want to affirm the collectivist metaphysical principles that underwrite the government in that Constitution, at the same time pretend that you're standing up for freedom and liberty by standing up against the tyrant. No, you're not. By affirming the Constitution, you're affirming the right of the tyrant to tyrannize. I know people don't want to hear this. This is why these videos are never going to be popular. I'm laying down some truth here that people just... I have no friends. The left hates me. The right hates me. Christians hate me. Other religions hate me because I'm an individualist. This is why nobody watches this channel. There's other reasons. The algorithm. I don't play the YouTube game. I turn off comments. For reasons that ought to be really obvious. I hate talking about the comments, but there was somebody who commented yesterday, and I get very few comments. Almost none. Basically none. But he goes, or she... They go, why did you turn off the comments on all of the videos that matter? And I'm thinking to myself, the question stated in that way is its own answer. That's why questions like this are why I turn off the comments. Because the comment section are full of people who do that. Those thinly veiled insults. I don't want to deal with those people because I don't want to fucking talk to you. That's why I turn the comments off, because I don't like people like you. I don't like people who, when they get a degree of anonymity, turn into assholes. I don't want that. I'm not interested in talking with you. I was saying to myself yesterday, I'm saying, I would almost say, would I rather have 10,000 views or 50,000 views per video with the comments open and unregulated? Or would I rather have 11 views with the comments closed? Or 10 views, or 4 views, or whatever my videos get. And I said, I'm pretty sure I would rather have like 50,000 views per video with the comments wide open. But I really have to think about it. I would have to think long and hard about it, because the comments section is the gates of hell. It's like, imagine the lake of fire in hell, and imagine that burning, putrid, poisonous lake, and at the bottom of that lake, that's the comment section of a YouTube video. Anyway, I was like, so anyway, but I closed the comments on those videos because, the question, why do you close the video? Why do you close comments on the only videos that matter? Because of questions like that, because of comments like this, that's why. Because I know and I know what he's talking about, the atheism videos, because atheists are like that. I've been around atheists to know that 99% of them are not particularly pleasant people. They're religious zealots in the guise of scientific rationalism. And they're very angry when you question their religion. When you question their mystic beliefs and assumptions, and you ask them to defend their assumptions, they turn into absolute monsters. And I just don't want to deal with them. It's like, sorry, it's my experience. Not all. Of course not all. But I was in the church for like 35 years. They're as bad as any religious fundamentalist I've ever run into, if not worse. So anyway, so I know I'm rubbing people the wrong way. I'm not going to have a lot of followers. People don't want to hear this. People are really, they're like ticks dug in on a dog's ass, man, that you cannot dig them out of their presuppositions and their metaphysics. It's almost impossible. And some days I would say it's impossible, to the point where I almost wonder if we aren't all just predetermined to believe something. Because it's like, no matter how much reason you bring, people are like, fuck you, man, you don't know what you're talking about. I believe it because it's true. I mean, I don't actually believe that, we're determined. I'm just saying some days it really does seem like it, because, but my point is that, it's going to be unpopular. People don't want to hear this. They don't want to hear it. And I don't play the YouTube game. I don't have comments on certain videos because I can't be bothered. I just don't want to hear it. I don't want to be exposed to this vomit in the comment section. But anyway, I'm hoping that even if just one person changes their mind, not even change their mind, just one person goes, yeah, maybe I should start to examine the metaphysics. Maybe I should look at ideas and things. And when I see things going wrong, maybe I should look at the assumptions they make about the nature of man. Maybe it's their assumptions about what man is and what reality is and who God is or what he's supposed to be and do. Maybe that's a problem. Maybe the inconsistencies in those assumptions are why everything's going pear-shaped. Maybe it's not just people doing it wrong and we just have too many assholes around. Maybe it's something fundamental. If just one person, I can convince one person just to examine the metaphysics, then I would consider that a win. Just one person outside my family. I have kids and they listen to me, and they look, they know I don't browbeat them. My kids my kids understand that daddy is not looking to tyrannize them. They're completely free to believe what they want, but they love me and they listen to me. And of course, they're a captive audience, so I've had many years to convince them. But just one person outside my family. I'm sure there's more than one. I've run into people that I've talked to and they've listened. But I'm saying, even if one person in the greater internet ether I can convince to just think a little differently, maybe consider that the assumptions need to be examined, then it's a win. But anyway, I've talked long enough. It's well over an hour. I'm going to close this down. Next time I'm going to get back to the dissident right and why they don't understand individualism, and then I'll move on to whatever floats my boat after that. All right, have a great day. Have a great rest of your week. I wish the best. Be well. Any of the tiny number of people that come and listen, I love you and I appreciate you being here, even if you hate me. If you listen to this whole video and you hate my guts, I still appreciate you and I like you. And I know that you're cool. You can hate everything about me, but if you bothered to listen to this point, you're cool in my book. Even if you fucking hate everything I said and hate me and hate what I stand for, to be able to put up with this for an hour and to listen, really listen, I know you're cool. So I wish the best and God's blessings on you and your loved ones as well. All right, having said all that, I wish everybody here the best, whoever you are, 1, 2, 5, 10 of you. Have a great week, and I will talk to you later. Peace.